Hello, and welcome back to the Crisis of Readers, the resurgence of the Crisis of Readers. I'm Allie.
And I'm Mac.
If you're new here, this is a podcast where we talk about books and all things books. If you're not new here, yes, we took a really long break, but we're back now.
We're back.
Yes, we probably just uploaded the Hunger Games Part 2 episode to our first one the week before, and now we're going to be talking about book tropes today.
Yeah. It was a rough time for everybody, us included. It's in fact still sort of a rough time, but...
The time hasn't gotten better, but now we're like, let's just do this so it feels better.
Yeah, exactly.
Today we're going to talk about book tropes. I think we should do this in 2 parts, maybe? I think we should do what book tropes we like, why we like them, and then we can talk about the tropification of books from book talk. I looked at a couple articles and stuff like that.
Okay.
We can talk about it. Because I do think that there has been a hot debate about presenting books by their tropes that I think we can talk about. I think we'll both have strong opinions. So
yeah. Oh, I'm excited.
Yes. Okay. All right. So what are your favorite tropes? Well, let's do this more structured. We're gonna go by genre.
Okay.
We'll go by genre, and then we'll decide what our favorite tropes are within a genre. We can start with my least favorite genre, romance, because I do think that will be the hardest for me to pick a trope for.
Okay. So I guess when we started talking about this theme, I was like, how do I determine what tropes I like? Because just thinking about it, like raw, without data, I was unsure, which I was actually going to find my best themes. So I went and took all of the books that I had read in the last approximately 2 years, and then I used AI to auto-extract themes from them, and I was like, what themes at least am I most commonly reading? And then I can decide from those which I actually think are relevant and which I actually enjoy.
You really took a PhD approach to this.
Well,
I did not.
It's hard because then I got in this whole thing about what exactly a trope is, and that was kind of a rabbit hole.
Yeah, because we have to talk when we talk about the book talk stuff. We will talk about book tropes versus microtropes.
Yeah.
And how a lot of people are using microtropes right now.
Yes, because that's a whole thing. But let's start with that romance one that you talked about. In the romance kind of genre, the main tropes that came up, and I would think I'd classify them as common themes. Maybe that's a trope. So I had a big one, which was LGBTQ representation and identity exploration, and those were a lot of romance books, which does make sense. And that's stuff like mutual pining, coming of age, and found family. While we're in that trope. And I think that's pretty accurate. I definitely read a lot of books like that. I love found family. That's not just romance, but in general, that's one of my favorite kind of tropes in general. And then the other one I think kind of falls into, I also don't read a lot of straight romance. Neither of us I think read a lot of just, I don't mean heterosexual, I meant singularly romance. I think we read...
Yes.
I think we both read romance as part of other genres more frequently than a romance book on its own.
Yes, pretty much. I very rarely pick up a solely romance book.
Yeah. So a lot of these are going to probably cross over to other books as well. Because I have fake alliances, I would say, is a romance trope that I quite enjoy. Or a political marriage. 10 out of 10. I love that.
Political marriage is good.
It's good stuff. And then enemies to lovers. I love an enemies to lovers. Even more specifically, I like a rivals to lovers or a friends to lovers. But I feel like I don't read as many books as that. I read a lot of fan fiction that's friends to lovers, but it's not, I think, a very common book trope, to be honest. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fair. I do love a enemies to lovers. Enemies to lovers, but specifically, I guess rivals to lovers.
yeah,
I love when it's a solely romance book and the two main characters just don't like each other for some really not that deep reason. And they've made up their minds about each other at this point, and then something happens and they have to start interacting, and then they slowly realize that like they do like this person.
hmm,
And I think I like it because it is such like real life sometimes.
yeah,
I I've in the past been like, I don't like this person, and then I've gotten older. I mean, this was when I was very young. When you're like 10, you've
hmm,
decided something, and then you get older and you're like, that was not a valid reason to give like this person this rap. But now I'm 28 and I'm like, oh, thinking back, that was probably a very juvenile approach to this.
yeah. I think it's just so fun. And also, I have a thing where I don't like when a romance happens too quickly. Like I want to feel it occur. And I think if you don't start as at least a rival, a lot of times the romance happens really fast, and it feels like it's not, there's not enough like payoff, you know?
That's fair. Hot take, I like fated mates. I like when they see each other and they're immediately like, I'm in love with you. Like, you're my destiny.
Mhm.
That shit, eat it up. I'm like, this is exactly what I've wanted my whole life.
I also quite like that. I think that kind of goes into, I also like arranged marriages. That's kind of a trope I quite enjoy. But I think that I don't know. My view is why I like it so much is I think I've liked that for a long time. I read, especially when I was younger, I read a lot of books like that or fanfic like that. And I think it's a little bit like I want someone to be forced to love me, and then they'll learn that I am a fun person, and they'll get
No,
used to it.
that's fair. It's like people say the people who like enemies to lovers like it because they want to know that someone out there could see all their flaws and still love them anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's a very similar vibe.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so romance, I think enemies to lovers is my big one. Fated mates I do enjoy.
Hmm.
I do enjoy a quick little, oh, I read this one series and it was like insta love, and I love that. I don't know why. Insta love is like, I think it's because when I'm reading a romance book, I'm reading it for one very specific thing, and it is romance.
Hmm.
And so I don't want it to be dragged out because I'm like, this is not what I came here for. Whereas, like, I guess if you're putting a romance into other stories, like other genres of stories, like fantasy
Hmm.
or literary fiction or anything like that, I do want it to be a little bit of a longer, slow burn.
Hmm.
But when it's just a romance novel, nothing is quite as good as just an insta love. I don't know why.
That's fair. That's fair. I just don't read that much. I think full on just a romance book. The ones I do are generally ones for I don't think I've read just a straight and that now I mean a heterosexual romance book, just a normal one, um, in a long time. Mostly because I don't pick romance books, so if I'm reading just a romance, it's because somebody gave it to me or was like, "You should read this." Um, so I think we've both read "She Gets the Girl," which is about um, it's a like a sapphic love story in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and that was really fun. I enjoyed it. Not that it's the best written book ever, but it's like a fun book. Um,
I think I liked that one too because we both lived in Pittsburgh
mhm.
together. Lore drop, that's how we know each other. Um, but so I think reading that book was fun because it was the location.
Yeah.
Like reading it and then them being like, we were at the Cathedral of Learning, and you're like, oh my
Oh my
god,
god, I know that.
I've been there.
Yeah,
Or like they're on Pitt's campus and you know exactly what parts of them they're talking about.
yeah.
And I was like, see, this is fun.
Exactly. Which I quite enjoy that. That's very fun. I don't know if you've read this book. This is, I guess, also technically sci-fi, but I would say it's mostly a romance because the romance is the main part of it. It's called Winter's Orbit.
Wait, is that two boys?
Mm-hmm. It's an arranged
I
marriage.
Okay, so I literally just got a library loan for the audiobook of that
It's
2 days ago because I
it's
was like,
really
I'm gonna
good.
listen to this. All
It's
right,
yeah.
so that's good to hear because I was like literally just downloaded that to read.
That's so funny. It's really good. I read that really randomly. I don't know, like probably a few years ago, but I've been thinking about it recently because I enjoyed it so much. It really does fit some like some a lot of niche, which is I like an arranged marriage. That's my little subfield.
Okay, cool. Now I'm excited to put that
Awesome.
in my. I couldn't get the actual physical like ebook for it, so we're gonna have to go audiobook. Not my favorite format, but we provide.
We'll
we
have,
persist. Provide. We provide.
persevere.
We persevere. That's what it is. Yeah. Now that romance is out of the way,
Okay.
because neither of us really read a lot of romance.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Most of the time, if I'm reading a romance book, it is gay, and I'm reading it simply because I want more gay representation in books. So I'm reading it so that it gets more hype, not because I'm like, this is going to change me personally.
This is for me in particular. Yeah.
Yeah. I do that with a couple things. I do that with authors of color too, if I think their story sounds kind of good. I read this book this year. It was called So Let Them Burn by Camilla Cole.
Okay.
And I loved that book. I love that book. And it was like fantasy. And I picked it up because I was like, let me support this like debut author. Because sometimes it's really hard to get traction for your books and stuff. So I was like, let me do this, even though I know I hate dragons, and the dragons were a main plot point. And I don't know why. I truly can't handle dragons. Like as soon as they start talking about dragons, and my brain is like, yeah, I'm over it.
Actually,
so
I'm
dragons
checked out.
are dragons not my favorite trope. Actually, hate a dragon trope, and specifically, I do not like when they start talking about how you bond with your dragon. I don't know why, but every time I'm like, this is irritating to me. But I read that book and I did genuinely enjoy it.
Nice.
Despite the dragons. Like, I still gave it a pretty good rating. The dragons didn't stir me away too hard.
Weren't too turned off by the dragons.
Yeah, that's the main reason I haven't read Priory of the Orange Tree. Because everyone is like, I love that book, I love that book, I love that book. And then I'm like, oh, I should read that. And then they're like, dragons. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, there are
never
dragons
mind.
in that book. Though, honestly,
You'll never catch me reading Fourth Wing.
Fourth Wing is... That's one of those books that was fun because it was bad, but I cannot bring myself to read the second book. Like, I have the second book. And it just... There's so many other things that I want to read. It's just kind of gone to the wayside.
Oh, that's so fair. Well, now that we're on dragons, we can go into fantasy tropes that we like.
Sounds good. I read a lot of fantasy. I think we both read a lot of fantasy.
I would say that's probably both of our bread and butter.
Yeah. And I read like a very wide range of fantasy also. Because there's some like... We've both read some high fantasy. So stuff like Brando Sando, and I've read like Lord of the Rings. I don't remember if you've read it.
It's actually on my TBR right now. It's on my bookshelf for this month.
Nice. Fun lore fact. The guest book at my wedding was in fact a leather-bound copy of Lord of the Rings, and all of the guests signed it, which was very fun. So I've been like, I'd started rereading it at some point, and it was very fun to get to go through and see everyone's little notes in the margins. I was like, oh, so cute, so fun.
That is cute. I just had a moment of panic where I was like, did I sign it? And then I was like, I surely did. And I remember what I wrote.
Yeah.
But yeah, my favorite fantasy, I don't know. I guess fantasy tropes, I love a political fantasy.
Yeah, very much so.
I typically would like some type of political strain on whatever fantasy that I'm reading, whether you're reading from the actual like political point or view or someone who's being oppressed by the political group. So I guess like a trope of mine would be political tensions.
Yeah.
Um,
I think we both read. But I also think that sort of a lot of fantasy is about, it's like taking real political issues and putting it into a different sandbox to sort of show the issues in a different context. I think that's a lot of fantasy. Um,
yeah, I feel like political tension is very relatable and very easy to turn into a story. So I feel like sometimes they do that. I've read a few that it's not necessarily political. Mm-hmm. It's more like race based, like the conflict comes between groups and less about like the actual government structure that it has. Those are interesting too.
Yeah.
I feel like dystopian. I feel like we both read a lot of fantasy dystopian novels.
Yeah, we definitely do.
And dystopian will always have that political undertone because that is the point.
Yeah, that's sort of the whole idea.
The whole idea is the political undertones.
Yeah, we're reading Cruel Prince right now, and it's been really fun because my husband has never read it before, and so he's been reading it to me while we've been like cooking or driving, and it's hilarious. He first of all loves Jude. She does anything, and he's like, I'm so proud of her.
Yeah, no. Jude is like the perfect level of unhinged main character.
Yes, exactly.
That you do nothing but love her because you're like, I wouldn't have reacted this way, but it's great that you did.
Exactly. And like I understand why you did that. That's crazy. Not me, but I get it. Also, I feel like every time Cruel Prince is probably one of my favorite series. I adore it so much. Every time I read it, I like it more. I feel like on this particular read through, the biggest thing I'm coming away with is she actually very much acts like a 17-year-old. So she's doing things that an adult would do, but her thought process occasionally is so teenager. It's so incredible.
That's so true. I do love Cruel Prince. Cruel Prince is a fun. The fairy trope, I feel like, is so hit or miss for me.
Yeah.
I either like it or I hate it.
Yeah.
That one did it right. It did it well for me. So I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
That series.
I agree. And they really lean into fairy as more like closer to mythology fairy than just like rebranded elves fairy, which I think is more fun. I enjoy some. I've read like a few sort of like fairy tale retellings, so stuff like have you read House of Hollow? I don't remember if I got that from you or from somebody else.
I did not read House of Hollow.
Okay, that one's also fun. That one's sort of a fairy tale retelling. It's also fairies. And that one's crazy. The whole thing is insane. There's this like girl who is basically this girl goes missing, and she's a fashion designer, and her sister is trying to find her. But you kind of find that she has this really weird, like both her and her sister have this really weird relationship with their parents and like all of this stuff, and you're sort of like sucked in, and as you go, you realize that it's like they're actually fairies, and that's the problem. Like that's what's going on. It was a cool book. It's one where the writing was really fun. Like stuff like that. And then what was the other one? I think it's like the Hollywood or something like that. The Hazelwood, sorry. That's the other one.
I've heard of the Hazelwood, but I don't think I've read that one either.
I think that I bought it with you while you were there.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah. It's good. It's like not amazing, I would say, but it generally falls in that kind of like fairy tale retelling that I quite like, so it works out.
Yes. Fantasy tropes, I just realized that I read a lot of, I don't even realize I think I was reading it, I'm looking at a list, is the chosen one trope. I read a lot of the chosen one trope.
That was the biggest one that I was surprised about, because that came up when I was doing my little analysis of the books I read, was the chosen one trope, because I definitely don't seek that out, but I also feel like that's just sort of a common theme across a lot of like fantasy and sci-fi, honestly, and dystopia half the time is
Yes.
the like chosen one
The
idea.
chosen one. Yeah. Or I love the chosen one with the reluctant hero because I love nothing more than when they're like, I didn't ask for this, because that's how I feel like I go through life. I didn't ask for this.
Exactly.
I'm just here.
I'm unfortunately competent, and this is what's happened. Yeah, because that's like, I mean, Hunger Game. I think a lot of the books even that we've talked about are that, because Hunger Games is very much a reluctant chosen one. Legendborn is less reluctant, I would say, but a little bit reluctant, perhaps.
Legendborn is, yeah, I guess that's more like a secret society trope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought for a second you said Legendborn, and my brain went to Legend by Marie Lu.
I mean,
and I was like,
that's
also more
awesome.
dystopian.
Yeah, that's not
With
fantasy.
very much, that's not, but it is very much. You realize that your society's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's what that is, and I like that one too.
I adore it. That one's so fun too, because I feel I could talk a lot about Legend, and I'm sure we're going to talk about Legend at some point, because we both love it. One of my favorite things about Legend, though, is that she was like, I'm not content with simply doing one type of dystopian critique, and has multiple, and it's incredible. She has like I think the common sort of critique on an overly militaristic government, which I think very frequently was seen in a lot of like early 2010 dystopia. But she also has one whole one about like the evils of capitalism, which incredible, because it was kind of early. I think we have more stuff like that now, but not a lot I think existed about that. It was definitely more about like authoritarian regimes than the actual horror of unchecked capitalism.
Yeah.
She even had some stuff about like she like one of the things in her book was about like a rating system of people, and I think that legitimately is getting used somewhere, and I don't remember where. But yeah, anyway, Marie Lu, 10 out of 10. I love her. Love Legend.
Yes, yes.
So good.
We will do a whole episode on the Legend series because it owns a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
I was like one of those book series that I like picked up, and I was like, I don't really know anything about this. I've never heard of this. It was just at my library. And I was like, I'm just going to read it. So I picked it up, and I read the first book in like literally 24 hours, I think. And then after that, I was like, I need all of them. But my library hadn't purchased all of them yet. So I went to the librarian, and I was like, yeah. So she was actually one of my best friends, because I was one of those kids who was friends with the librarian in high school. And so I was like, I need you to buy these now. And she's like, well, they're not on I said, now. And then they were there the next week.
Incredible. 10 out of 10. They're so good. I also ate those books up. I don't remember how that fell in my lap, but it did. And then I was hooked. Incredible.
Yes. I didn't really, they're saying this, I'm looking at an article right now on, let's see here, let me give you Scribophile. And it is by Fija Callahan, and it says the book tropes, the ultimate list of 70 plus tropes in literature.
Okay.
And then they break them up by book type, so genre. Ooh. So they had fantasy. My favorite ones that keeps coming up is the love triangle, because I absolutely love the love triangle.
Yeah.
Unless it ends in polyamory.
Yes, in which
that's
case
the only time it's effective.
Yeah, that's the only correct way of having a love triangle.
Yes. The meet cute was in the romance section. I forgot about the meet cute. Oh, back to romance. The fake relationship.
Oh, I do like a fake relationship.
I love a fake relationship.
There's
something
good.
about it.
Yeah. No, that's always fun.
Yes, but we're in fantasy right now.
This might count as a fantasy, and I would probably, but like dark academia. I feel like we both enjoy that trope. Though that can also just be It depends. Dark academia has a lot of potential sort of sub tropes or like subsections, I would say.
Yeah, because there's like Babel
Yeah.
by R.F. Kuang that definitely could fall within fantasy because it has a magic system.
Yeah.
But then there's like The Secret History, which is probably more lit fic
Mm-hmm.
mystery
Or
than.
yeah. Did you read If We Were Villains?
I'm currently reading If We Were Villains right now, and that one definitely is lit fic mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like Dark Academia as a whole is like, I don't even know if I consider it a trope because I feel like you can do so much with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely like a vibe I'm always seeking out.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a good way of putting it. It is so vague. I just read. I'm starting to read the Scholomance, so I just read A Deadly Education, which is the first book.
Yes.
And it's quite good. And that's also Dark Academia, though it's less serious than a lot of Dark Academia tends to be. But this still has the vibes, which is fun.
Yeah, we'll have to do an episode on Dark Academia specifically because I have strong opinions about the dark academic aesthetic and the people who submit to it, and it will be ranty. So it's not for today.
Okay, we can table that for next time.
Yes, I think you've gotten little peeks of my feelings about it in our text messages.
Mm-hmm. No, there's a lot to be said for like faux intellectualism, which I think irritates both of us, and I think some dark academia sort of feeds into that. And not to like, I don't think either one of us is someone who is like, you have to have a degree to be intelligent, but we did spend a lot of time in academia. I would say we're both relatively intelligent people, so we do know a lot about what the culture is like, and nothing irritates me more than the sort of like faux intellectualism, because I think it's frustrating and annoying.
Yeah, even outside of like faux intellectualism, my thing is like the gatekeeping of intellectualism, I guess, is the best way to put it, where we're putting a ranking system on intellectualism when intellectualism really should just boil down to the pursuit of knowledge or the ingestion of media, and that can be seen in many different forms, and not having the nuance to be like, this is this form of ingestion of media or this form of pursuit of knowledge is causing like gatekeeping in a way that is just deterring to people who don't feel like they necessarily are interested in what the faux academics are interested in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Which is very anti-intellectual because, I mean, obviously we're both science people, but like open science is a big thing, but honestly open source stuff in general is really huge in academics because all research is a collaborative effort. It's
true.
The lone genius is a false trope. It is not how research proceeds.
Yes. All right, let's see. We have horror books. I do love a horror book.
I don't read very much horror at all, to be honest.
I have to say I read a lot, actually. I'm constantly looking for it.
Nice.
I love a monster trope. Ghost story, monster trope, demon haunting, that kind of stuff.
That is fun.
Creepy old houses are always good.
Creepy old houses are fun.
So that was fun. I like that book. I recently read the Final Girls.
Oh, the Final
Support
Girls
Group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the Final Girls Support Group by Grady Hendrix. And then also I've read Horror Store by him.
Okay.
And I kind of like his little like satire-y horror situation. Like there's a lot of stakes to what he's doing, but there's also like a campness to what he's saying, like how he's writing it that like I find very entertaining. I know a lot of people find like him divisive, but I do enjoy his books.
That's
I have
fun.
to say.
The only horror I've read, I think, is Stephen King. And of Stephen King, I haven't really read a lot of his horror books. It's been mostly like I read Under the Dome, which I would say is no horror book. It's more of a thriller. But That is fun. I do like, I feel like I read detective books or like murder mysteries more often. I know we both do. Um, and I quite like the like riddly kind of thing that kind of is in a similar genre to detective books. Um, I started reading the Inheritance Games, which is like one of the big examples of this, which I know is that's written by the same woman who wrote The Naturals, which we've previously covered. But it's pretty good. It's I would say not as good as The Naturals, but it's still fun. Um,
Yeah, I have that on my bookshelf. I still have to read it. I this year, uh, partially because saving money, but also partially because my physical TBR was getting far too large,
mhm.
and I need to be realistic. I have not been buying as many books, so my goal this year is to really get my physical TBR down to like 5 books.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Because I think it's kind of ridiculous to have this many books that I haven't read in my ownership. To be fair, I buy a lot of secondhand books. I don't buy a lot of brand new books
Yeah.
because, better for the environment and all that
Mm-hmm.
shenanigans and, you know, consumerism. But
And the wallet.
the wallet, that too. That's the biggest part. But so none of it is like, it's not like I've lost a lot of money, but I've been trying to really slow down
Yeah.
how many books I've been buying. I did get 2 new thrifted books for my
Ooh,
birthday.
very fun.
Please don't attack me. I got James by Percival Everett, which
Ooh.
just won the Pulitzer prize this year, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. And then I also got this one book called A Dark and Drowning Tide,
Oh.
which I saw a book YouTuber recommend,
Mm-hmm.
and then I looked it up, and it's like sapphic whodunit with some magic involved,
That's very fun.
which are 3 tropes I like: magic, whodunit, and sapphic.
Those
So
that is a good combination, honestly.
I'm excited to read it. If I like it a lot, I might mail it to you so you can read it, and then you'll have to.
I'll let you know.
If I like it a lot, I'm gonna start reading it, and if I start really liking it, I'm gonna annotate it,
Okay.
and then I'll send it to you, and then you have to read it and annotate it, and then you can send it back, and then I'll have a book with both of our annotations in it.
That'll be
Because
fun.
I think that's fun and cute.
I agree. I think that's fun and cute. Yeah.
Yes. So we can talk YA book tropes, which
Sure.
this person here is saying really crappy parents is a YA book trope.
Sure. I mean, I don't know if that's only why, but
I agree. Found family, they're saying, is a YA book trope, which I would challenge and say that it can be in any
yeah.
book trope.
So far these sound like things that do happen often in YA books, but feel not YA exclusive.
Yeah, no. YA, I found family is pretty big for YA. I feel like when you're young, I feel like it's so easy to relate to like my parents are not the good guys.
Yeah.
Whereas like you get older and then you're like my parents were doing what they had to do.
They were doing their best.
They were doing their best. And so found family, I love found family.
Mm-hmm.
I once did a TikTok filter and it said, "What book trope are you?" And I got found family. So I guess that's me.
That's nice.
Um,
That's good. That's the best vibes. I also love Found Family. Oh, this is kind of this is kind of a fantasy one. But I've been reading a lot of cozy fantasy. And I've been quite enjoying that. That's like very opposite end of the spectrum of the political fantasy that we read a lot. But it's still quite fun. I will say that I generally don't pick them. One of my friends who lives where I currently reside, she reads a lot of cozy fantasy, and I get her books. So, but they're quite fun.
yeah, I can't do cozy books. I don't know what's wrong with me, but apparently I just need to have suffering in all forms of media. Like I was talking about this because like so many of my friends love like sitcom-y shows.
Mm.
I cannot stand a sitcom. I need high stakes drama. I'm watching How to Get Away with Murder,
Yeah.
because I like One Tree Hill,
Mm-hmm.
not a sitcom, definitely like a teen
A
drama.
drama.
I
Yeah.
ate that shit up. Um, I like need drama to like move
I
forward.
I do. I also don't quite like. I don't like sitcom books, or not books, sitcoms shows. Um, one of my biggest things that gets brought up a lot randomly is I don't like comedy. And I would say it's not that I don't like comedy; it's that I don't like things that are solely comedy because I find them boring. So
No, I so agree.
yeah,
I don't like comedy. I'll say it with my whole chest. And part of the reason I don't like comedy is because half the time I don't think most of it is funny.
that is yeah. I tend to not to be pretentious, but I think I like smarter comedy. I also enjoy comedy more when it's in a package. Like something, a running stream of jokes is not that funny to me, but somebody like having a comedic moment in a serious show, I quite like, or in a serious book,
Yeah.
I find quite good.
I
Um,
also think I like satire more than I like comedy.
yeah, I would agree with that.
And I guess which is a form of comedy. So I shouldn't say I don't like comedy. I don't like when it's like sitcom-y forced
Yeah,
comedic moments, but I like when it seems like it's something that should be normal and then it's just kind of satirically like funny.
yeah.
Like I think that's why I like the movie Bottom so much
Bottoms
because
is a masterpiece.
because at no point were they like it was very clearly a comedy and some
Yeah.
of the dialogue was very comedic, but also it was like trying to take the like coming of age teen drama and like just made it so satirical, and the things that they were doing were just so insane that it was hard to not like find it funny.
It was crazy. That was a wild movie, but it was so good. And seeing that was such a fun experience.
That was a fun experience. I love that movie theater we used to go to, the Manor in
In
Pittsburgh. I
Pittsburgh.
guess we can talk about Pittsburgh now because neither of us live there anymore.
We've dropped the
Um,
lore.
Drop the lore. But the Manor in Pittsburgh was so fun, and it had a bar, and I always
Hmm.
love a drink while I'm watching a movie.
Yeah. And they do
Um,
themed drinks. Shout out the Manor. Love the
yes,
Manor.
shout out the Manor. Everyone, if you live in Pittsburgh, go to the
Go to
Manor.
the Manor.
If you don't live in Pittsburgh, but you're in Pittsburgh, go to
Still
the
go to the
Manor.
Manor.
Still do it. Um,
There is some cozy fantasy, and I do still enjoy it. That is more just like they run a coffee shop, and that's sort of the thing. I will say that there's a smaller subsection that I very much enjoy. That is, it's cozy in the fact that they're generally short and they're have an uplifting message, but they're not quite like the same. It's not quite the same thing. There's like a little bit more of a. They're like more literarily challenging, I would say. And a great example is a Psalm for the Wild Bill, which is really really good. It's like a novella, and it's
oh,
like,
I've heard of that one. Yeah,
have you read it?
I haven't read it, but I have heard of it.
It's really good. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it, and it's amazing. It's technically a sci-fi, but like really technically, I would say. The premise of the book is that at some point robots just became sentient, and then they fucked off to the woods, and people were like, fair enough, they can go and do that. That's crazy. What a lovely view of humanity. Um, but and then it's about this guy who he or they are a monk and they're trying to find their passion, and they've decided what they want to do is be a tea monk, which is a person who goes around to places and basically is like a therapist with tea. And then they get really good at that, and then they're like, actually this is not fulfilling, so then they go fuck off into the woods and then hopping upon a robot, and then the book is about this robot and this tea monk like learning from each other, and it's a really lovely kind of short novella. I cried a
Yeah,
lot reading it. It's quite good.
I should read that one. I love a little short novella.
Hmm.
Uh, I recently read Carmilla, like the OG Carmilla.
Ooh.
Because there's this book, it's called Hungerstone, which is like based on Carmilla.
Okay.
I have a hold on it in the library
Hmm.
because I want to read it really bad.
Right.
And it is hella hard to get. But so I wanted to read Carmilla before that. So my
Okay.
friend bought it for me.
Oh.
And Carmilla is fun. what I will say is calling it sapphic is a stretch. I guess it was probably sapphic for its time.
Mm-hmm.
But like the book cover that I have, it's literally like a sapphic short story. And I'm like, they don't even kiss.
We're really stretching what sapphic means.
I know, like they have like a very close like female bond, and she
Mm-hmm.
definitely like flirts with her sometimes, but like it's more homoerotic than sapphic.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Which we need to decipher this. Like I was expecting a kiss, at least one.
At least one kiss.
She didn't even get a kiss. No smooshing from the two women in the book.
And that's disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Just like few flirting scenes, and that's it.
I'm gonna be honest, just a few flirting scenes, like a sapphic book does not make. Who hasn't just flirted a little bit with your friends? Like that's just, that's just how life is sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have flirted with all of my friends, probably
Yeah.
at least once in our friendship tenure.
Exactly.
It's fun.
It's fun.
It's fun. Yeah. And before people are like, well, that's just like a girl thing. Everyone should flirt with their friends.
Everyone should flirt with their friends.
All right, tell your husband he should be flirting with his friends.
Mm-hmm. As he should. I get sometimes DMs from my husband's friends, and if I post a picture with him in them, and it goes, your husband's looking good, smirky face, incredible. I'm glad that I'm getting the flirting through my DMs.
That's actually hilarious. But yeah, moral of this podcast, flirt with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, do you want to talk a little bit about the tropification of books?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I read a couple articles
Okay.
about the tropification of books. One was called The Rise of the Reader Aesthetic,
Okay.
Book Talk and Book Tropes by Grattan Street Press,
Ooh.
which is an Australian press company.
Okay.
And then another was an article called Book Talk's Tropification of Literature is Problematic by Catherine Lee with Pipe Dream, which is a college newspaper, I believe, but I couldn't figure out which college it was. It was the one in New York. And so if you know where the Pipe Dream is from, that's where it is. But so both were pretty much talking about tropes and how Book Talk has started to use tropes quite a lot to publicize books and to push books. And the article from Grattan Street Press I liked because they did talk about like there is a benefit to tropes and it to help authors gauge what readers want to read and to help a reader find what their ideal book is, so they can continue to find media that they like. But I guess the bigger issues these two ones talk about is microtropes.
Yeah.
And what they say microtropes are smaller than like a big trope, where like enemies to lover would be a trope where you know that the enemy and the main character protagonist are probably going to fall in love if it's an enemies to lover book. But then there's like microtropes, which are like, who did this to you, touch her and you die, knife to throat, that kind of is taking the surprise and the tension out of reading any of these books because you already know what you're getting.
Right.
So they said that it zaps any tension from the story, and that now in the publishing world, with the ability to self-publish more often and having easier access to self-publish, it's becoming clear when a book has been written as a story versus a book that has been written around tropes, which I do agree with. I've read a few of like romance books that were really big on TikTok when I was going through. Sneak peek, I probably will continue this episode now that we are back on our podcast guide, but I was reading any Kindle Unlimited book that came up on my TikTok feed. And a lot of them are romances, and I was reading, and there are a few that you can just tell, like, they went, I want this character to say, who did this to you? And then they built the story from there, instead of being like, I want to tell this story, and I think the character would be characterized as doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I personally just like, I don't like how much they talk about tropes on TikTok. I feel like, for me especially, like, I really agree with it takes the tension out of the book for me.
Yeah.
I love to go into a book like, without too much knowledge of what's going to happen. Obviously, like, trigger warnings are a great thing, I think, and with, like, Storygraph's trigger warning system, you can really, like, check in on a book, but it doesn't give it's never giving as much away as, like, being like,
These are
the main characters have to share a bed. Like,
Yeah.
okay, well, now when I get to that scene, like, I'm not even like, what's gonna happen? I
You've
know
been
they're gonna
waiting
share a
for
bed. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, there was no lead up to it. I'm just like, no, it's coming. But yeah, so
Yeah.
how do you feel about it?
No, I agree. I think I especially agree about the idea of writing for tropes. I think is not a great one, especially micro tropes, because I think it's fine to write for a lot of the tropes that we've previously mentioned as things that you think are interesting and want to write for. But yeah, I do think when you start getting into these micro tropes, because they're also how the book is advertised, and you really start getting like very almost like customized for you, and it's not challenging at all, and not that every book has to be challenging, but I do think it makes it a little bit, it makes writing feel much more commercial and less like an expression of like the author's passion, or like something literarily exciting, which I think is just sad, especially when people get sucked really deep into it, and that's really all they're reading. Like, obviously, that's your prerogative. Read what makes you happy. But I think it is sad if that's the way that the industry in general is going, and if people aren't looking outside of the sort of micro tropes that they personally like, because then you don't have a fun, varied reading experience. And I think this is one of my big hot takes, is why I think microtropes are such a big thing, is I think it's when AO3 got much more mainstream during the middle of the pandemic, and people got comfortable with the AO3 tagging system and saw that, because I don't know if you got these a lot, but I got a lot on my AO3, or not, sorry, I got a lot of my TikTok specific fanfic recs, and a lot of times they were at like shown on TikTok with like, here are some tropes that these things fit into. But for fanfic, that's kind of common. It also is fairly important because like fanfic and literature, and while some fan fictions I would say are like true works of art, amazing, 10 out of 10, not disparaging, they're not the same thing as published books. And I don't think most people don't interact with them the same way. There's a lot of different conventions about even how you're supposed to interact with a fan fiction as opposed to a published book. So that's my personal take about that.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like fan fiction is like the whole idea of fan fiction is to take media that's already out there and repackage it to alternate universe, or what you wish would happen, or like something else that could have happened kind of idea.
Yeah.
So those microtropes aren't spoilery, or they don't take away from the medium, because the whole point is to oversimplify, I guess, to a new specific point that you want to make with what is already out there.
Yeah.
And in the article by Catherine Lee in Pipe Dream, she does say that the tropification of novels is promoting a troubling oversimplification of literature.
Yeah.
So people are honing in on one thing about a book instead of looking at the book as a whole story.
Yeah.
Which I do agree with. I do think that, like, you could literally put out like the Hunger Games, and you can be like, he gives her bread. Trope, he gives her stuff.
Yeah.
That's really small, and we miss a lot of the point of the book.
Exactly.
Or like trope, like mutual pining. Like, they do mutually pine for each other at some point, but that's still not the point of the book.
That's not the point.
Like,
yeah. You also just miss because most authors not most. I don't know if I could say most, but I would say most like well-developed authors are not writing to specific microtropes. They're writing to an idea, and their books will happen to incorporate some microtropes. Um, so I think that when you get too bogged down in this idea that like I only read enemies to lovers, you'll miss things that you'll probably quite enjoy, that are even similar to books you've read, but are don't technically fall within that like specific trope, or even like yeah. And I think that's why I don't do a lot of reading by even genre. I do a lot of like, if you liked this book, you'll probably like this one, and I will read the back and decide. Slash, a lot of my books recently are just friend recommendations because I'm reading too slowly. So,
No, that's fair. I think like a big takeaway from like the trope discussion too is to like have an open mind.
mm-hmm.
I know we both very much value that in the sense that we're never like I only read fantasy. Do
Yeah.
we enjoy most fantasy that we read? Yes. Do we gravitate towards fantasy? Yeah, probably. We know we like it. But we've also both read romance novels that have come up and we've been like, oh, we should try that. Or like The Naturals was like really like
Really
a one-off
random.
of like
Yeah.
YA Criminal Minds is how it was explained to me, and I was like, I typically don't even read like murder mysteries that much or consume that kind of content, but it sounded good, so I was like, let me pick it up, and then we both loved it. Like
It was so
if we
good.
were like we only read fantasy, we would have never read that series.
Exactly.
Iron Widow,
Uh,
actually,
it's
Iron
so
Widow.
good.
What I do have to say is that I was brought into Iron Widow by a microtrope,
Were you? Yeah.
but the author gave me the microtrope.
Yeah. And that
But
one,
it was
the one that it is so specific that it is not, I think, that common to be looking for books that only end that way.
yeah, no, that microtrope definitely was like the biggest, like I was like, no one does this. I'm going to read this book. And I think the author knew that. They definitely were marketing it
Yeah.
because they knew that that trope was not utilized very often.
Yeah. I'm very excited for whenever we actually do our Iron Widow book talk, because it's gonna be super fun.
Yeah, we have to read Heavenly Tyrant now, and then we can do it because it's
Yes.
a duology.
Yes, I'm so
I
excited.
don't know if it's a duology. It might be a trilogy. I haven't read the second one to know if it's going to continue.
Yeah.
But
But-
once we read those, we can
We'll do it.
definitely do that. Yeah. You've read If We Were Villains, right?
Yeah.
We could also do that book. We could do a little Dark Academia break because I'm about to finish it.
Okay.
So
I'm down for that. I have to review because I remember what it's about, but definitely don't remember well enough to talk at length about.
real-time planning of our podcast episodes on the podcast. And I will be leaving this in so you know how we do it.
This is how it works.
This is how it works. Sometimes we just think and we're like, oh, maybe we
shoot.
shouldn't do that yet.
Yeah.
I also want to read Babel soon. So,
I love Babel. Babel's so
like,
good.
we could do, no, we should we'll do the books and then we'll do specifically talking about dark academia and the academic aesthetic separately because I'm going to have a 40-minute rant locked and loaded about dark academia as someone who prescribes to dark academia.
Exciting. Stay tuned, listeners.
Stay tuned. Ollie is gonna go fucking wild. We can't. We're also an update. We're only gonna be posting these on YouTube for now, just because that's what we want to do. And so if you hear beeps, it's me blurring out all of our swears because you're not really supposed to swear on YouTube.
Oh shoot! I forgot about that.
Yeah, if we ever wanted to monetize this, we can't swear. So
Okay.
we probably will just start doing that now.
Okay.
So
I'll think about it.
every time you hear it beep on my end, just know that I am not doing what I'm supposed to do.
And that's the podcast planning session in the middle of the podcast.
And that's been our segment on podcast planning and censorship. Yeah, so I think we both are like, we like a trope. We love to, we
Mm-hmm.
will occasionally recommend a book based on a trope.
Yeah.
Um, what my friends love to do is to tell me if a book is gay, and then they'll be like, read this. And I'm like, I don't like that genre. Why would I read that? But then I usually do
Yeah.
because they told me to. And sometimes I find bangers.
You know what? If you put
Which
a book in front of me, there's a good chance that I will read it, even if I'm not crazy about it. Um,
Same. I've read a couple books where I was like, this is insane. Why am I reading this? And then I finish it and I'm like, I didn't actually hate it.
I did,
Actually,
not bad. I got sucked into one of those recently. And by recently I mean at the beginning of the year. And it's like one of the only random like Kindle unlimited type books, romance books, and it was again heavily marketed towards tropes.
to trops.
And my thing is like they get me if they post snippets of it instead of just the tropes, because I start reading the snippet and I'm like, okay, now I do want to know what happened. And I was getting the same one but different parts of the book. So I was like, never mind, I have to read it. So I ended up, it was like $1, so I got it. Um, I didn't enjoy it. Well, it wasn't good, is what I'll say. Did I enjoy it? A little bit. I mean, the main character is insufferable. It was definitely written to fulfill the main character is this gorgeous blonde Instagram model, except she apparently hates social media and hates eating healthy. She's just a nerd who's also she's a secret best-selling publisher. It's like so,
She's not like other girls, guys.
yeah.
In the words of Curtis Connor, she's not like other girls. She eats dirt.
Exactly. In the year of our Lord 2025, you cannot be writing. Like don't write. She's not like other girls, girl. It's not fun. It's not cute. And then her husband, of course, is like the heir to like a billionaire or something like that, and he works all the time, and she thinks he hates her, and he thinks she hates her, but they're both actually attracted to each other. And then she's like, well, I just stayed working out because I thought that's what you wanted. And he's like, I literally don't care. And I was very like convenient that both of you were just heavily lying about your personalities and that your real personalities happen to match so well. Um, anyway, but I did sort of enjoy it in the way that I enjoy bad books sometimes.
Yeah, the sports romances really get me. I think I'm never gonna like them, and then I start them, and I'm like, I actually don't hate this as much as I thought I would. There's a really popular one that's on Kindle Unlimited, and I might have to cut out this section because I don't know if I really want people to know that I read it and enjoyed it. I first of all read it. It was like 600 pages, and I didn't know that, and I was on my Kindle, so I was reading it, and then I like finished it in one day. And I looked up how many pages it was, and I was like, there's simply no way I read that much. And I did. I had read the whole book, and I was like, this is crazy.
A little wild.
A little wild. But yeah, so I read that whole book, and I was like, this is simply too much. Actually, now that I think about it, I might have skipped the first 5 chapters.
That's not for me.
I do this thing. Okay, this is a confession. I will simply skips parts of media I don't care about. When I watched the most recent season of Stranger Things, the scenes where they were like in Russia with like Hopper and Joyce, I would simply skip over. So I really don't know what happened during that whole arc.
I will say that being friends with you has inspired me to not feel pressured to watch media that I like, to watch parts of shows that I don't care about. It is very empowering because I will occasionally, especially I used to just drop shows that I get to like a part where there was too much secondhand embarrassment or I just didn't care about, and I would just stop watching. And then we hung out enough and you'll just skip episodes you don't like. And I'm like, that's revolutionary. Actually, I'm doing that. So I watch Grey's Anatomy, skip half of the scenes that I don't care about.
I've watched like a good portion of Grey's Anatomy and have skipped like full plot lines, like
And some of them deserve to be skipped.
with the Izzy and Danny I think it's one of the earlier seasons where
I
she falls in love with like the cancer guy who's
yeah.
dying. The cancer guy is a crazy statement. Sorry, the cancer patient who is dying.
He doesn't
Every
have cancer, but that's okay.
Oh, what does he have?
He has a heart condition.
Oh, the heart condition guy who's dying. Um, as you can see, I skipped every single scene with them in it, so I don't even know what he had. Um, I've literally watched like that whole season without watching any of their scenes together. I don't know what happened.
I stand by that is a good decision. I also rewatched that particular season of Grey's Anatomy recently and skipped every scene with him in it. I went, that's not my business. And then we got to the prom episode, skipped that whole prom episode. I went, that's also not my business. I do not care about anything that's happening in your life.
I'm not gonna lie. I've rewatched like 3 seasons of Grey's Anatomy, except for I skip every scene except for the scenes with Meredith and Derek. Like, I'm simply there for their romance arc. I only watch scenes involving them. So I could make you a supercut of Grey's Anatomy with all the stuff that I don't want cut out. I do that with a lot of shows. I did that with Degrassi. So it was like part of I was like, I don't want to watch this. I also watch a lot of things on 2x speed, including movies and TV, which I know a lot of people think is unhinged, and it probably is, but I don't have a lot of time. By I don't have a lot of time, I mean I don't want to give anything a lot of time.
Okay, so let's think about our final thoughts about tropes, since we've wandered off topic, and let's come back.
It's been a long pause.
Yeah.
Final thoughts. I think tropes are fun. I do think that sometimes book talk goes a little too far and that they can fall into that like anti-intellectualism that went on TikTok for a little bit. Like,
yeah,
I was like, why are we all acting like we can't critically think on a book?
Yeah, like we can do both. You can read something that's maybe not the most intellectually stimulating, but you can also acknowledge that it's good to have books that do perhaps challenge you and aren't just custom tailored to whatever specific micro trends you like.
Yeah, and I think maybe because I've always been an avid reader outside of book talk, that it's been like interesting to see how tropes have taken over a little bit, but then also hating like the micro tropes because I feel like you're taking all the fun out of reading a book where you only know like the very high overarching tropes of it. But it's also not like a complete criticism if you only read books based on their microtropes. Like, read what you want to read, as I'd rather you be reading than not reading. But I do think that it is worth commenting on to say that like it definitely is changing the scope, and we don't want it to change the scope so much that it changes publishing.
I think that is my biggest concern about the whole microtrope thing. It's less honestly about people's personal reading habits, because I know we're both pretty big on the you should read what makes you happy and what you enjoy reading. But I think even bigger than that is I don't want it affecting, I don't love how it makes publishing and writing feel more like consumeristic, because you're making this like very like tailored product that is made very clearly to be able to advertise more obviously. And I think that because they're like, I want to be able to advertise that this has the one bed trope or whatever, and that does well, and obviously does well on social media, which is why people are writing to that. But I think it does inherently make a less good product than if these things kind of happened organically within the plot.
Yeah, so that's where we stand.
Yeah.
Tropes are fun. Everyone should comment their favorite trope down below.
Yeah.
And what you guys think about the microtropes that are... what's your favorite microtrope? Everyone say their favorite microtrope, even though we did say that we don't love them. But I do want to know, because it is fun to know kind of like what everyone's little fun, little quirky microtrope is, even if I don't want every book to be centered around that.
Yeah. I will say mine is I very specifically like when there's a little kissing with the knife to throw. I think that's very fun.
That's fair. I do fall sucker to the "who did this to you" microtrope.
It's good.
Every time I'm like, oh my god,
who did
care so much. But yeah, so that's been this week's episode. We're glad to be back. Hopefully we can post more consistently. That's like definitely the plan.
That is the plan.
We actually won't be posting this until we have more backlog, so hopefully these just keep rolling
happening.
out. But this has been The Crisis of Readers. I'm Allie.
And I'm Mac.
And we'll see you next week.
And remember, flirt with your friends. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Crisis of Readers.